Alright guys, well it's that time of year again. Episode 5 of Dumb Installs. Kind of crazy that this has been going on for the 5th year now, but yeah, so before we get started, a couple things is, first of all, thanks for a great year. Big year for the channel. I mean, we hit 3,000 subscribers this year, and I'm actually just about to hit 3,500 right now. I think I need like 1 or 2 more, so if we have 3,500 by the time the video rolls out, thank you also for 3,500 subscribers. Yeah, so as far as next year goes, it'll be an interesting year. We'll see how things play out. I won't be running out of videos for a while, but we'll see how next year plays out. I'll talk about that more another time, but this episode, first of all, I'm currently working on this. Gonna make the full video 2 days before New Year's here, so this one might be a little lower effort. I think I said that last year too, actually, but this one also be a little lower effort. Just haven't had as much time. Also don't have quite as many pictures this time, so at least that'll help. It won't take me as long to make it, so maybe I can put a little more work into it, but I don't know, not a whole lot else to say. I guess as usual, these pictures are not mine, so if you see your picture, I'll leave credits for whatever I can find, but if I don't have credit for your picture, let me know, or if you want your picture taken out of the video, just send me an email or whatever, and I'll get it taken care of. Otherwise, just sit back and enjoy, and Happy New Year. Alright, so starting us out here, we have, it looks like a Marantec Synergy 370 probably, and instead of, well, basically they just decided they were going to cut and install the opener straight through that support beam, that structural support beam running through the garage, as usual, instead of just doing a jack shaft. You know, you see this all the time, and of course the setup was probably originally there before they had jack shaft openers, but now you have the jack shaft opener, so the way I see it, might as well just do the jack shaft. The other thing is, I've never actually tried out any of these Marantec. I've never seen one, never tried one of the newer Marantec residential openers, but I've heard that they are decent. They seem like they're kind of difficult to program and stuff, but they seem to be definitely quieter than the LiftMasters are, and I know for a fact they're not as slow as the older ones. I would be interested to try one out at some point. So here we got a LiftMaster 8160 WB, looks like. This thing, well, you can see it's got the newer style light cover, so it can't be any more than like 3 years old. And somebody, I guess, wants $800 for it, which 8160s, I can tell you, are definitely not worth $800. If somebody's paying $800 for getting an 8160 installed, they should definitely look into a different company, because that is way too much. I can tell you that. So if for whatever reason you are a fan of the Wayne Alton 9100 and you're still not convinced that they are garbage, this is exactly why we call them the cardboard doors. You can see that bottom section, that whatever paper backing is peeling away, it looks like, and you can literally see that literally just looks like cardboard. You know, those 9100s have, they probably are the worst door you could possibly buy. You know, there's basically no structure to those panels. It's just the foam, and then that little bit of steel. You know, the steel on the outside is super thin, and it doesn't really add any structure at all. Plus then they got the, you know, the panels leak air all the time, and you can't, it's pretty difficult to get an opener connected to it without having the bracket rip out eventually. Just not a good door. You know, a bunch of new houses have them, but if you have one in a brand new house, chances are you'll probably have to replace it within the next couple of years. Alright, so here we got this wild contraption. This is what looks like to be probably most likely a 7-foot rail being used on an 8-foot door. And you can see they decided to use that crazy little angle mount there at the front to install the header bracket. Looks really secure, and you know, I'm guessing what's actually holding up the weight of the rail is the piece that's attached to the ceiling. The part that's anchored to the wall is most likely just to keep it from swaying back and forth, but still, you know, it gets to be a point that just get the 8-foot rail, because it'll look nicer and you don't have to worry about it swaying all over the place. It'll run better, and you can still, it's also not exactly great for the door. You can see how long that arm is set, and you can imagine it's probably pulling back really hard on the door when it opens because it's at more of an angle than it should be. So I can't say I'm really 100% sure what's going on here, but you can see we got, so it's a pan door, obviously, big surprise, and you can see pretty much the entire center stile on every panel has pulled away from the door somehow. And you can also see the arm, or the trolley for the operators came off the rail, which is pretty typical of the older square rails. And that's just kind of hanging there. It also looks like the door doesn't have any top fixtures on it, at least on the left side. So I'm not really quite sure what happened here. This might have been an attempt possibly to open a door with a broken spring, or to open a locked door or something. Because that definitely could tear away the stiles from the door, but I don't know. I'm not really 100% sure what's happening here. So whoever installed these, first of all, didn't do the little curlicues, pigtails for the sensor wires, but they also just put in general way more effort into installing those sensors than they really needed to. You can see they basically added 2 blocks of wood, one against the wall and then one at a 90-degree angle, so they could basically mount it to the floor without having to use Tapcons. But if you can see the other door over, you know, the only reason I would really think of that you would, well, let me actually start over. Personally, I do prefer mounting the sensors to the wall versus the track, because, you know, if you put it on the wall, you're not going to get any movement, so you won't get a callback because the door keeps jumping back up because the track's moving when the door's running. But if you want, you know, there's really no reason that I can see to mount it to the floor, because if you look at that other door, it doesn't have low head outside hookup brackets. So you didn't have to mount it on the floor like that. You literally could have just put that block of wood there and screwed it onto the wall. But really, you can just clip it onto the track, and it honestly will probably be fine. So I can tell you right now, I'm pretty certain that would be a structural beam in the garage. So there's definitely some kind of steel or wood. There's definitely solid points in that beam. And instead of deciding to mount the back hangs to that said solid beam, this guy decided to extend them all the way back and then use those long pieces of cheap angle screwed to the ceiling to mount this opener. So here I guess we got somebody that couldn't figure out how to take his sensor brackets off, and so I guess every single time he has to replace his opener, he's just going to keep mounting sensors higher and higher and higher because he can't figure out how to take those brackets off. So we got one of those Genie Signature Series motors, which I'm not exactly biggest fan of those, the way the design is, but you can see what we got going on for the back hang job. It's just basically a guy that decided he didn't want to cut the angle iron, but I will give him props that he actually did use some good angle instead of using the cheap stuff that you get with the opener. So here we got, looks like a bug infested smart panel, 398 LM. The rest of the button looks pretty clean, but just bug infested. But I will definitely tell you from experience, a bug infested wall button is definitely better than a mouse infested opener. You probably saw the video. I recently found a cool opener. It was an MachForce. I pulled it out of the dumpster and I was like, oh, this thing looks like it's in pretty nice shape, so I'm going to hang on to it. And then the limits were not working on the opener, so I pulled the back panel off to take a look, and there's a mouse nest that I found in there. I was like, well, let's get this out of here. And then I took the case all the way off, and there was all loads of mouse poop inside the case, and I decided, yeah, I'm not gonna deal. It's not worth dealing with this. So yeah, you know, a bug infested wall button, definitely not the worst thing in the world. Well, looks like we got a guy that's advertising for his work on Facebook, but I guess he really doesn't seem to do great work, because you can see that his opener is kind of ripped out of the ceiling on one side, but at least it looks like he used a one-piece T-rail on the opener, and it's actually a decent opener because it's the AC motor, so that's at least a plus. And this picture's kind of low quality, but you can definitely tell what's going on here. Never There's never an application where a square rail is better than a T-rail. You know, a square rail is never going to be better, long story short. You know, I don't care how much easier it is to put together a square rail than a sectional T-rail. They make so much noise, they're so much weaker, they flop all over the place, and then they can also bend and get big kinks like this. If a T-rail gets a big kink like that, I would actually be quite impressed. So this one's actually a little smarter than some of the ones we see. So this 2265 was not going to fit. So you can see we got this crazy pulley system going on here that he's got the big shaft, and it looks like he's got some actual nice bearings in there holding that in place. It looks like it. It's kind of hard to tell. And I'm pretty sure that's what we got going on there. And then that runs down, he's got another sprocket on the end of the rail that turns the chain and runs the door. It is a lot of work, but keep in mind this was before jack shafts, and this is definitely better than cutting through a structural beam to put the rail through to be able to install the opener normally. So I guess here somebody got lazy and decided they didn't want to deal with the super tall ceiling in there, so just decided to use the kickers for the tracks to mount the opener to, which looks a little ridiculous. Plus he's got that whole bar going across the back hangs for some reason, and I guess he is kinda has those other pieces for kickers. Maybe you can see the pieces that are horizontal that run back to the opener. Definitely should have done a high lift or vertical lift for this garage for sure, but I'm guessing this whole thing was a DIY install, including the door. Main reason I can kind of tell that is just look at the spacing on the track for the top roller on the left side. So I believe the 8065s came out in like 2015 or 16. This thing's probably not any more than 8 years old. That is a pretty freaking rusty chain. That's definitely close to the ocean, but I never would have thought that in 8 years the chain could get that rusty. So it never hurts if you live in a salty area to spray a little bit of WD-40 on your chain, you know, or silicone or something. You know, you're not supposed to use WD-40 on your hinges, but you can put some on your chain to keep it from rusting. So this has got to be one of the worst ones I've seen yet. So basically, this is another one of those that's probably a 7-foot rail on an 8-foot operator. And this guy really had to extend his arm. You can see at one point he must have had a genie, because he's got that crazy arm made out of genie arms. And he's got some angle holding the two pieces of the arm together. And then you can see for the header bracket, we have the Chamberlain arm installed up there. And then we got one skinny piece of angle going down to what looks like just one side of the header bracket to hold that on. And then we have another skinny piece of angle going from that Chamberlain arm up to a piece of angle on the ceiling to hold that Chamberlain arm in place. And it looks like we've also got a mess of wires tied onto that Chamberlain arm, so if that arm ever falls down, all those wires are coming with it. I'm kind of thinking that's not actually peanut butter, but again, you know, these Wayne Daltons are absolute garbage. You know, like I said, hardly any structure at all of those doors, so those brackets are going to rip out real easily. And once they rip out, it's not worth fixing them, just get a new door. You know, the way I see it, if you don't want to replace the door yet, just use it till something breaks, and then when something does break, then just replace the whole thing. It's not worth putting any money into those doors. I can't understand what's going through people's heads when they decide they're going to do this and put drywall and put a beam and something around the entire garage door opener. I don't know how you're not thinking down the road, you know, what if I need to adjust something? What if I need to replace the opener? It's just like when people put drywall around the spring system to where you can't get in to replace the springs anymore. Then you got to knock down the whole thing, and then you got to spend the money not only to fix the garage door, then you also got to spend the money to fix the drywall. So we got this immaculate backhang job on this Whisper Drive Plus, and then I'm not 100% sure what's going on with the sensors. You can see we got the brackets up on that angle iron, but they're not pointed at each other. And it looks like there might be a sensor in the left bracket, and I don't know where the sensor for the right bracket would be. So this one could be another 7-foot opener on an 8-foot door, although this one just extends out towards the springs. So it's possible that maybe, there could be those people that want to follow the manual to the letter, and they're like, oh, well, there's a spring in the way of this 2 inches, so I guess I'm gonna make this crazy contraption here to bring it out so it can still be that exact distance. If it could also be possible that maybe there's not any structure above the springs, above where the springs bolt in, so it would just rip right out because it's just going straight into drywall. But then you can see we do have a piece of angle iron that goes up and screws into the wall above. So this, like I said, this doesn't seem like it would give you enough clearance to use a 7-foot rail on an 8-foot door, but I don't know, very well could be. So there gets to be a point that honestly, just get a jackshaft motor. If you're gonna do all that angle and stuff, just get a jackshaft motor, and that's an 87504. It's already a pretty expensive machine. Just get the jackshaft. Ideally a Genie jackshaft, because they don't have a bunch of problems like the 98022s do, which, by the way, we have had, a little side note here, we have had 98022s with the updated software that have still done the force erroring. Just something to think about. This is why you always use legs instead of nails to install your spring pad, because it'll just rip right out of the wall like this with enough force. Same thing for the operator mounting pad. You get all that, especially with an AC motor, you get all that jerking with the motor starting up. If you use nails, that mounting pad is just going to rip out of the wall if you just use nails, because they're smooth. They don't have as much holding power as legs do. So again, people not thinking about how you're supposed to be able to adjust this operator, set limits, program remotes, or just in general replace the opener. This one, well, of course it had to have been done after. There's no way they would have put that beam there and then installed the opener. But again, I don't know how you don't think of that. So I guess this person doesn't like those fancy door brackets, because it looks like the way it's done is he took one of those, it's one of the nice reinforcement brackets, and he cut the bottom of it off, because you're not supposed to take out those top screws to slip it under the strut. That's not at all how you're supposed to do that. And then you just screw that onto the door, and then that bracket's really not serving any purpose, because this guy decided he wanted to use the LiftMaster bracket and just screw that right to the top of the door. This had to have been a DIYer that did this. There's no way this was a professional. So this is just a little strange. It looks like we got this Clopay full view door, and it's got some crazy wood back hangs for the tracks, and it looks like it's got like a 2x6 that runs the entire length of the track, kind of like that 82-inch angle that you put on the horizontals, except that really should come with, that's supposed to come with a heavier door like that. And then to add on to that, whoever installed the door put the pin for the cable the wrong way on the bottom fixture. That little cotter pin is supposed to be on the outside, so you can take the cable out without having to take the bottom fixture off. So here we have a Genie MachForce, and I guess somehow somebody decided that they didn't want to use the new rail that came with the operator, and so somehow they made an old style Genie screwdriver rail work. I actually do have a video of this one running on my channel. I will link that in the description in the credit for this picture. But yeah, that's pretty strange. That's definitely a new one. Although, I have heard about some of the Genie screwdrivers having issues with the ones that have the 3-piece rails. I have heard about some problems with those, that after like 6 months of use or so, one of the screw sections is falling out of those little clips and coming out of the rail. I haven't heard of that with the one-piece rails, but I have heard about that happening with some of the sectional rails, which is interesting. So this is a job that I would definitely walk away from as soon as I go into that garage. I'm not touching that spring. I'm not stepping near that thing. I'm not stepping foot in that garage until that hive is out of there. So this one is kind of looking like somebody put too strong of a light bulb in here, and I guess it set on fire and burned the opener. Yeah, this is why you actually got to pay attention to the max wattage you can put inside an opener, because it will melt the plastic and it can certainly start a fire. So it looks like the springs on this door have definitely been adjusted several times. Can imagine how much of a pain that would be to wind the spring if the set screws are right on the spring cone, and also how much of a pain it would be to slide the spring off of the shaft. So there's a lot wrong here. This is 100% a DIY install. The arm is backwards. I can definitely tell the opener is installed way too high above the door. We don't have a top strut, which is especially bad with the arm being backwards like that, because it's just going to be basically pulling straight back on the door. And it does actually, to add on to that, it does look like they replaced the regular, well, they have a regular Chamberlain door bracket on there right now, but it looks like at one point they had a nicer reinforcement bracket. You can kind of see the mark, the vertical mark on the door where the steel is a little bit wider. It looks like there used to be a nicer bracket there, and I guess whoever installed the opener decided to replace it with the little Chamberlain bracket. So I am pretty impressed actually that the arm bent. I'm not sure, I couldn't tell you what happened here, but I'm impressed that, assuming the door came down on something, or I don't know, but I can't believe that arm bent before that square rail bent, because yeah, that's especially because that's one of the old style arms with the really thick steel. So you've seen this a couple times before, and it's always the Genie screw drives too. We've got where the motor head is installed on the header end, and the header end is installed on the motor head end. You just got to switch around the capacitor wires and you're good to go. Also, if you look on the front of the opener, it looks like we got dip switches, so that means this was most likely a clutch screw drive, which of course we all know is my favorite. So here we got some upside down window inserts. I don't know if this is a manufacturer defect or if this was a DIYer that installed those upside down, but I'm kind of leaning towards the DIYer. Well, I can tell you that rail is for sure definitely not going anywhere. We've definitely got plenty of center hangs going on for that rail there, and it also looks like the opener is back hung twice. So, those Wayne Daltons, those skinny little Wayne Daltons are pretty heavy, so you got to have a lot of center hangs on that rail there. Well, I hate to have to make you guys look at this, but yeah, we got an 8160 on a square rail. Well, that looks like it's actually a wood door. So an 8160 with a square rail on a wood door is definitely not a good combo. I know I can't exactly be making fun of this because I did put a square rail on my aunt's 8165, but that's because you don't want to spend the money on a T-rail if you don't have to. Maybe this was the same kind of thing, but still, you never like to see a square rail on a LiftMaster. So I think this is the second one or third one of these we've seen on dumb installs where we've got both an extension and a torsion spring in use at the same time, and it looks like the cable for the extension spring just goes and loops around the drum, which that surprised that seems like it would really mess with the cables on the torsion for the torsion system. And I don't know if it has two cables hooked up to the bottom of the door, but I would be curious to see how that's hooked up as well. So these are one of the most over-engineered back hangs I've ever seen on an opener. Completely unnecessary to have all of that. You can imagine he spent probably about maybe half as much money on angle as he did on the whole opener. But yeah, that's a pretty ridiculous one. He's got like a whole box structure around it. Maybe he's trying to protect the opener so nothing hits it. So this is kind of cool. Would be kind of cool to find a video on this. or to see a video of this working. Somebody actually installed a garage door opener on one of the truck trailer doors. I'm sure everybody's all thought about what that would be like at some point, but this is the first time I've ever seen it actually done. I would be curious in how they fit that in there too, because those usually are pretty tight up to the ceiling and there's not very much clearance in there, so I would be curious to see how they actually got the opener to fit. So this is a opener that had a replaced, that had the gear and sprocket assembly replaced in it, and whoever installed the new sprocket, I guess, must have lost the other two bolts or something, and then decided to put the bolt in through the top, which it's supposed to go in through the bottom because there's no thread in the actual opener chassis. The threads are in the sprocket plate, so it's supposed to thread in from the bottom. I tried actually one time. I thought about, well, wouldn't it be so much easier to thread in the sprocket from the top so you don't have to get under the motor? Nope, you gotta put them in from the bottom, unless you put nuts on the other side to hold it in place, but just do it the right way. Put it in from the bottom. So this, I'm assuming, is they're installing that 980/22, because you can see that cable tension monitor's got some paint on it, but yeah, that's not exactly where that little sensor is supposed to go. It's supposed to go down on the cable, but it also doesn't really look like there's a whole lot of room for the sensor to go. But still, that's kind of a weird spot to put it, even if you don't want to put it where it's supposed to go, because it's going to ride on the drum and it could wear stuff down. So this kind of looks like pictures from an online custom review on Amazon or Home Depot or whatever. These are notorious for having ridiculous backhang jobs and crazy messy wiring. You can see with this Genie we got a bunch of cheap angle going on all over the place, and then we also got that MyQ hub mounted to another piece of angle behind the opener, which is a little bit strange. Don't know why they couldn't just put it in the ceiling. Yeah, so it's not exactly a 3245. It's actually a 3280. And yep, and yes, it does look like a 2280 because there's no 315 logo, but that is a 3280. You might be able to kind of see in the smaller pictures the purple button. The early 315 openers made in 2005 originally did not have the 315 logo on them. I know my 3575 doesn't have it, but I think that's the only one of my 315 openers that doesn't have the 315 logo on it. But yeah, the early ones did not have it. So this one's a little blurry and it's kind of hard to tell what's going on, but this one is looking like it's the back hangs were originally just put into straight drywall and they ripped out. You can see the angle is also pretty bent up, and I'm not really sure how. It must have been at one point hanging on by just one screw. Possibly, I don't know. But yeah, this one definitely just ripped straight out of the drywall because whoever installed it didn't install it right and put it into studs. And it looks like that one's a LiftMaster, so professionally installed too. So this is the same kind of concept as that 2265 we saw earlier. This one is a 1060-6, 1/2 horsepower. And this one's got the same concept, that it's got the opener mounted at a right angle, and that's got another extra sprocket to basically deal with the limited backspace in the garage, which again, it's a lot of extra work, but it definitely is a better idea than cutting through a structural beam to install the opener, and definitely better than surrounding the whole opener with drywall. And here we can see we got a door that probably dumped the cable and came off the tracks, and the crappy backhang job for that Genie screw drive didn't exactly hold up. Looks like it probably just broke straight off and ripped apart, and now the opener is also dangling there. Would be a fun job. So I'm not entirely sure how this would have happened. It looks like the chain is still attached to both ends of the inner slide. So my guess is the chain probably skipped off the sprocket, and then you can see how the back hangs are attached to the very back of the opener. So I'm guessing that the chain skipped off the sprocket, and then the backings were probably angled forward, so the opener just slid straight out of the tube support and is just dangling there like that now. But you know, that's definitely the typical Stanley installation with the crossed over flat pieces of angle. I guess it's also possible maybe the cable could have broke, but I'm guessing the chain probably just skipped off the sprocket on this one. Alright guys, well that basically closes it out for this year. So thanks everybody for coming. Like I said, we'll see what this coming year brings. Gonna be some things changing as far as life stuff goes. But for now, thanks for watching, Happy New Year, and we will see you next year.